Good morning, everybody. Hope you have a fabulous Friday today. Hope you had a great time on your field trip yesterday. What you need to have out is your homework from yesterday. Make sure your name's at the top. You're going to turn that in, and you also need to have out your Daily Beaker page. This video is going to walk you through everything that you need for class today. It's going to tell you your Daily Beaker question. It's also going to tell you how you're going to turn in your homework. And it's going to walk you through the notes today. If at any point y'all need to stop, you need to rewind, or you need to go back and hear something again, please ask this up if she would do that for you. Make sure that you have everything before you leave class. This video is also going to be posted on the website. So if you want to go home and listen to it again or watch it again, you're more than welcome to do that. It's going to go over the notes again. So feel free to ask to stop or slow down or pause the video if you need to write something down. For Thursday's Daily Beaker, please write in field trip for the box. Make sure that you've got all 5 boxes filled in before you turn in your paper. So on Thursday, make sure you write in field trip. For Friday's Daily Beaker, here's your question. Write 1 fact about plate tectonics and write 1 fact about the Earth's crust. Make sure that you're giving me good facts and good statements for these. Make sure you're not writing they're made of the Earth's crust is made of rocks. Give me something really good and really substantial for your information. When you finish all of that, make sure you've got all 5 boxes filled in, and if you would pass it to your substitute along with your homework, make sure you've got your name on both of those so I can give you a grade for it. If you need to pause the video here so everybody can write it down, go for it. The next thing we're going to do is in our notebook, go to your next clean page, and the sub is going to pass out a copy of the volcanoes notes. So just like we've done in the past, you're going to stack them together, you're going to fold them in half hamburger style, and then you're going to glue in the second page first. Remember, the second page first. And I always do the creases go towards the middle of your notebook. That's the way it's easier to write on. So if the first person in each row would grab glue for people behind you, make sure you don't grab scissors, you just need glue today, and pass that out. And then you're going to get your notes page. There's 2 pages. If you need to go back in your notebook and look at some other pages that we've glued in for notes to double check on how to glue it in, use that as a reference. So pause the video here while everybody gets all of their notes glued in, and then after you're finished, if you would put the glue back in the pockets, make sure the glue tips go down and you've closed the lid on your glue bottle. There shouldn't be any trash. You shouldn't have had to cut anything. So make sure everybody has their notes glued into their notebook and something to write with. I'd also like you to have your textbook open to page 422. So this is what your notes page should look like. In your textbook, this lesson starts on page 422, so make sure you have your textbook out also and you're following along. The first section is talking about volcanoes, or what is a volcano. A volcano is any place where gas, ash, or melted rock comes out of the ground. We know that from previous lessons that the earth has several layers. So all of this stuff is coming up from the mantle, from the center of the earth. Many volcanoes are what we call dormant for a period of time. Dormant just means that an eruption hasn't occurred for a longer period of time. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not working. It's kind of like trees when they go dormant for winter. They just haven't erupted violently for a long period of time. Volcanoes form as rocks below the Earth's surface melt. We know from the rock cycle that heat and pressure inside the Earth's layers cause rock to get very, very hot, and they form this substance that flows called magma. Remember, magma is underneath the Earth's crust, lava is on top. So for volcanoes, before they erupt underneath the surface, we're talking about magma. Lava is magma that has reached the Earth's surface, so be careful with the definition between these two. They're very similar material. They're just in 2 different locations. So lava is on the surface, magma is underneath the surface. that lava comes onto the Earth's surface from an area that we call a vent. That's just an opening in a volcano or a hole in a volcano. On page 424 in your textbook at the bottom, there's a diagram that's got 4 blanks. See if you can label the words that it gives you in those 4 blanks in the correct spot. The words that you're going to use to label are magma, lava, vent, and ash cloud. Use what you know about those 4 words and the diagram to see if you can get all 4 of those words in the correct spot. Again, if you need to pause the video here, you're more than welcome to. The next section is on the next page in your textbook. It says, what are the kinds of volcanic landforms? So what is going to form a different type of volcano is going to be determined by the location and the composition, or what the volcano is made up of, or what the magma is made up of. Here are the different types. There's a shield volcano, a cinder cone, a composite, a lava plateau, and they can also form craters and calderas. Volcanic mountains are built from material that is ejected from a volcano or that comes out from the center of the earth. The shape and explosiveness of a volcano depends on the lava's viscosity. Viscosity is a crazy word. All it means is resistance to flow. So the higher the viscosity, the more that material is not going to flow. So think of honey and water. They have different viscosities. They flow. One flows very slowly compared to the other. You could pour it very slowly compared to the other. Pyroclastic material, that's hot ash and bits of rock that comes out of a volcano, can also be ejected into the atmosphere. So we're going to look at the different types of volcanoes. This starts on page 425 with a shield volcano. So a shield volcano has a very broad, wide base with sloping sides that aren't very steep. A shield volcano has very mild eruptions. A cinder cone, this is a small volcano with very steep sides. It forms from ash and pieces of solidified lava that form from around a very small vent, a very small opening. A composite volcano is built from alternating layers of hardened lava flows and pyroclastic material. These generally develop into very large, very steep, tall mountains. There's a picture of these 3 on page 425 at the bottom. The next 2, lava plateau and volcanic crater, on the next page. A lava plateau is when you have a fissure eruption. Remember, the word fissure, all that means is a crack in the ground. So when lava flows from these giant cracks in the Earth's surface, that's going to produce a really flat layer of cooled rock. So it's not going to erupt out like we would normally think a volcano would. It's kind of going to seep out from this crack in the ground. And then the last one is called a volcanic crater. This is an opening at the top of a volcano. This is after an eruption. This top of the volcano, instead of being pointy, is basically going to blow off and leave this big bowl shape. Inside the volcano, the molten rock can form an expanded area or a bigger area of magma. That's called the magma chamber. So as a volcano erupts, it can change not only stuff on the surface, but stuff underneath the surface as well. There's a picture of a lava plateau and a volcanic crater on page 426 in your textbook. Also on page 426, it talks about the difference between a crater and a caldera. So these are very similar, but they happen in kind of different places. When a volcano erupts and it kind of collapses at the top of the volcano, that's a crater. When it collapses underneath or inside the volcano, that's a caldera. So this is on page 426. And again, calderas happen inside. So you're basically kind of exploding the volcano from the inside, and then all of that material is kind of going to sink down into this really large basin or this really large bowl-shaped depression or lower area where that volcano used to be a lot taller. The last section is talking about where do volcanoes form, where on Earth. They can't just pop up anywhere. They have to form after special circumstances are met. So they form at plate boundaries or in the middle of a plate. Super, super, super important. Make sure you got this underlined or highlighted. We know that there are 3 different types of plate boundaries. Divergent, the plates are moving away from each other. Convergent, they're coming together. And then transform, they're moving past each other or sliding past each other horizontally. At divergent plate boundaries, where the plates are moving away from each other, fissure eruptions are likely. So you can have volcanoes that have fissures or cracks at divergent plate boundaries where the plates are pulling apart. So the crust is going to get really thin, and that's going to allow the magma underneath the crust to come up to the surface and solidify as it cools. At convergent plate boundaries, where the plates are coming together, you've got composite volcanoes. These are very violent eruptions. That's because of subduction. Remember, one plate, like a submarine or a subway, one plate is going to go underneath the other. That's going to add more material to the layers underneath the crust. That's going to increase the pressure. It's going to build up over time, and we have to release that pressure somehow, and we do that with a volcano. So that's how we get our different types of volcanoes. They don't form at transform boundaries. That's where we get earthquakes. So you're just looking at divergent, where they're moving away from each other, and convergent, where they're pulling towards each other, as long as you've got subduction, where one plate goes underneath another. So this is talked about in your textbook on page 427, 428, and 429. So I would make a note to yourself because there's some really, really, really good diagrams for these 2 types of plate boundaries and how they form volcanoes. So it's 427, 428, and 429. On page 430, it's talking about hot spots. So if you'll go to page 430 and look at the diagram of a hot spot, this is how Hawaii formed. So what happened is this plate is moving, and as the plate is moving, there's a thin part in the crust that's going over this kind of pillar of magma that's in the mantle, and that's pulling up. As this plate moves over, it's going to have a vent or a hole in the ground, and that magma is going to be able to go onto the Earth's surface and form a volcano. But as the plate keeps moving, and you'll see this in the diagram, as the plate keeps moving, that's going to change where that volcano forms. So Hawaii is a string of islands that are formed from this plate moving over this thin piece of crust with a magma plume underneath it, and that's allowing the volcano and the magma to come out of the surface and form. So Hawaii is this kind of line of volcanoes that have formed over a very, very long period of time as that plate has moved. So Hawaii is a unique situation because it doesn't form at a plate boundary, it forms in the middle of a plate, and that's called a hotspot. So here's your homework for this weekend. Your lesson 4 review is on page 433 in your textbook. Please make sure that you have your name at the top. Very carefully tear it out. There are 10 questions. My suggestion is that you slow down and make sure that you read the questions all the way through and understand what it's asking you before you answer the question. Again, there's some really, really good diagrams in your textbook that you can go back. You wrote down page numbers in your notes, so you can go back and reference those. There's some really, really good pictures to look at. If you finish this today in class, you're more than welcome to turn it in today. If not, this is due on Monday at the beginning of the class period. Before you leave, please make sure that you have closed your glue lid and that you put your glue up in the pockets. Remember, glue tips go down in the pockets. If you are not taking your binder, your notebook, or your textbook home with you, please make sure that you put those up in your class period's area very neatly. And double check around your desk. Y'all have gotten really bad about leaving stuff in my classroom the last week or so. So double check around your desk that you have everything that you need and that your stuff is put away for your class period very neatly so we don't have to walk around it for the next class period. Y'all have a fabulous weekend. I'll be back on Monday, and I'll see you then. Don't forget your homework.